And kicking in at number 10 are kids going into a white van. This is no joke, kids, and I guess adults as well. You know, there's that joke going around, you know, don't go into white vans when someone offers you candy, because inside of the white van is always pedophiles. Well, this is actually no joke. There has been some kidnappers using candy to lure these young kids into their white vans, or I guess any vehicle for that matter. But who cares? They're mostly white. You guys don't need to be around vehicles on this night, so just stay safe, stay on the damn sidewalk, go up to those houses, beg for your candy. Which, actually thinking about it, it just sounds so weird why, you know, we're allowing you guys to go out there and beg candy door to door. This is like a pedophile's dream. A ton of kids knocking on their door.
Coming in at number 9, we have candy thieves. Kids already get free sweets on Halloween, so those that turn to petty robbery are just outright greedy. In 2011, 5 teenagers from Dale City in Virginia, aged between 15 and 19, terrorized trick-or-treaters, demanding that they give them their candy. When the treaters refused, they then threatened them with a gun, which they didn't use, but they did attack them. Luckily, the teenagers were later arrested. Coming in at number 8, we have a Snickers Stabber. In the year 2000, a man named James Joseph Smith snuck needles into Snickers bars that he handed out on Halloween, one of which stabbed a teenager in the mouth, although luckily it wasn't serious. Nonetheless, as several children had been given the needle-laced Snickers bars, the police investigated and charged Smith with adulterating a substance with intent to cause death, harm or illness. Unfortunately, he isn't the only candy stabber. On Halloween of 2016, a nail was found stuck in a Snickers in Coldwater, Michigan. I guess, like, how much can you really trust stuff that comes from strangers? Coming in at number 7, we have a girl shot because she was mistaken for a skunk. Like, how does this happen? An 8-year-old girl was enjoying a Halloween party in some fun trick-or-treat times when she was shot by a relative who mistook her for a skunk. Unsurprisingly, this happened in the USA, and the girl was flown 30 miles away from her home to a hospital in Pittsburgh, where she eventually recovered. She'd been dressed in a black and white Halloween costume and was shot by her cousin, who basically thought that she was a small mammal. I have no idea though, because 8-year-olds are significantly bigger than skunks. What kind of skunks is he seeing out there? She was in a very serious condition, but luckily she didn't die, so be careful when you're shooting skunks, or maybe just don't shoot skunks. Coming in at number 6, we have the East Coast Rapist. In 2009, 3 teenage girls were out trick-or-treating in Woodbridge, Virginia, when they unknowingly came across the East Coast Rapist. Aaron Thompson spotted the girls out walking with a bag of candy in the rain. He used a fake gun to force the girls behind a shop and then ordered them to lay down in a line, while he took them one by one in the woods to rape them. One of the girls managed to text her mum to say that a man was raping her friend in the woods and that she should call the police. Luckily, the police came, but Thomas got away. He was caught 2 years later and linked to at least 13 other rapes. He was gladly sentenced to 6 life sentences plus 80 years. To be fair, like, I'm really happy that he's behind bars, because what a sicko. Coming in at number 5, another sicko, we have the Candyman. For those of you that watched our video about Halloween deaths, you will have already heard of this man. The Candyman was the name given to killer dad Ronald O'Brien, who gave cyanide-laced pixie sticks to his children and 3 other kids in the neighborhood. This was all out while they were trick-or-treating on Halloween in the 1970s. Sadly, his son died of cyanide poisoning, however the other kids managed to avoid the candy. The reason he poisoned the candy? It seems it was to claim life insurance of his children to cover his debts. He was killed by lethal injection in 1984. Unfortunately, the victim at number 4 did not pull through. We have the sad murder of a 12-year-old boy. In Halloween of 2008, a 12-year-old boy suffered from a fatal shot to the head. He and his family were gunned down with 30 rounds of an assault rifle as they knocked on Quentin Patrick's door in Sumter, South Carolina. The family were out trick-or-treating, but the paranoid ex-convict thought they were trying to rob or shoot him. 12-year-old TJ Darasaw was with his 9-year-old brother and his dad, who were also injured. His mother and toddler younger brother were not harmed as they stayed in a car nearby. County Councilman Charles Eden said, "It's gonna put a dampener on Halloween," and like, I mean, you think? Another kid shot for no reason on Halloween, we have the murder of Tony Bagley at number 3. 7-year-old Tony Bagley was dressed as a skeleton as he went out trick-or-treating with his family in 1994. Sadly, as he walked excitedly ahead of his family, a man wearing a hood ran into the street, opened fire, and then got away in a waiting car. Tony's sister required surgery following the attack, and his aunt was shot in the leg and his mother in the chest. All of their females survived, but Tony died later in hospital. The killer was never found, and the case is unsolved, which means that this Halloween murderer is still out there. Coming in at number 2, we have another trick-or-treat murder. In 1957, Peter and Betty Fabiano were about to go to bed on Halloween night when the doorbell rang. Despite thinking it was a little late for treaters, Peter opened the door with a bowl of candy and was met with a masked woman and a paper bag. Betty heard a shot and a screech of tires and found her husband dying in a pool of blood. He died on the way to hospital, and Betty had no idea how to explain the crime other than trick-or-treaters showed up and shot her husband. Eventually it turned out a jealous friend by the name of Joan Rabble had convinced her lover Goldine Pizer to shoot Betty's husband. Pizer and Rabble called Peter evil and vile. After Pizer had killed Fabiano, Rabble hoped that she would win the affections of Betty, telling Pizer to forget her, which is how the whole scheme became unraveled. Coming in at number 1, we have the Halloween killer and rapist. 9-year-old Lisa French was dressed as a hobo when she was out trick-or-treating with her parents on Halloween night of 1973. She knocked on her neighbor Gerald Turner's door and he invited her in. In his sick confession, he recalls the look of fear in her eyes as he shut the door behind her. Lisa French never returned home and her parents raised the alarm. Sadly, she was later found dead on a nearby farmland. Eventually, Turner admitted to raping and strangling the young girl and received a 38-year prison sentence. At the time of the murder, he was already accused of molesting another young girl. One glimmer of light to come from this horrible proceedings were that law changes were made to keep sexual predators in jail until they were deemed safe to society.
Starting off this countdown, we have Samhain, which I always pronounce as Samhain, but apparently it's Samhain. Don't know how, but okay. Anyways, this was the Celtic festival that was celebrated in Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man. It was said that at this time the connection between the other world and our world thins, so it makes it easier for spirits and the souls of the dead to come into our world. So they would celebrate the dead and make offerings and sacrifices for them. Another part of this tradition included having the Celtic priest wear dead animal heads and skins and go around making predictions about the future. Most of the stuff they did to celebrate this holiday was done so that the spirits wouldn't get mad at them.
Number 9, don't go inside of people's houses. There have been stories out there of people saying,
"Yo, come in little kid, the candy's inside."
if someone offers you to come inside of their home, don't go inside like no matter what. You don't want to be a victim in any crime that is about to happen. I think instead of teaching kids how to expand, an equation in freaking math class in school, they should be teaching these kids everyday life lessons. Like, don't go into white vans when people offer you candy. Don't go inside of people's houses when people offer you candy. Why has candy become a very dangerous thing? Horrendously coming in at number 8 is you shouldn't be alone on this night.
You never know when I will come get you guys.
I mean, I shouldn't have said that. You never know when something bad will happen to you. So it's better to always have a Halloween buddy with you so you can keep each other safe for the night. Halloween takes place at nighttime where it's dark and very, very scary. Nighttime is the best time to commit crimes, like kidnapping, assault. Someone could get stabbed, someone could take all of your candy, so you guys better watch out. Always turn 360 degrees every 5 or 10 seconds. Okay, so let's try that move together. So walk, 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 spin around. Walk, 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 spin around. You guys got it? Okay, good. Use this technique on Halloween so you can see all around you at any moment. Number 7, stay away from hobos' homes, aka the dark alleys. You never know when the hobo's last ate, so they can be angry. So you stay away from them. You don't want to find yourself in any altercations. You don't want to be their dinner. Going down dark alleys could be hair-raising and spine-chilling.
At any moment, I can come out of the dark and get you guys.
I will take all of your candy, and no way you can beg for that shit back. Forget that.
I thrive on this night. I will let you guys do all the work, and then I'll come find you and take all your candy. That's how life is for me.
This is no joke. Okay, so terrorizing at number 6, we have cemeteries. On Halloween, you never know what's real and what's fake.
So you know what? It's better for you guys to stay away.
Imagine seeing a ghost and then just thinking, you know, someone's dressed up as a ghost, but it ended up being a real freaking ghost. This is a time for creatures of the dark to come alive at night and blend right in. The cemetery symbolizes the afterlife, the life of the death, and you never know when people are gonna rise on this night. You guys have been warned. Number 5, don't go into real haunted houses. This is a place where a real death happened. Usually a murder happened. You never know if that dead person is still haunting around in that haunted house. There could be paranormal shit happening in that house, and I don't think you would want to be a part of that. There could be extraterrestrial life and unidentified flying objects in that house. Unless you're a YouTuber trying to get, you know, those scary content views and those clickbait views, stay away from haunted houses on this night. I know I would.
I usually like to stay inside of a storm drain. At number 4, unless you don't want to run into me on Halloween, I would stay away from what I just said, the storm drain.
Don't try and squeeze yourself down there, even if I offer you candy.
I will find you, and I will get rid of you. That's right, kids. You have been warned.
Stay the hell out of my house. I already have enough kids down here this year. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't. Oh, shit. You're an editor, right?
Yeah.
Can we edit this part out?
No.
Okay, that shit better be edited out. Number 3, next up, we have abandoned corn mazes. This is a place for sure you don't want to be during this night, the night of Halloween, the night of the devil. You shouldn't be in a place that is very dark and it's a maze. I mean, what if you can't get out? What if someone is chasing you inside of that freaking maze and you take the wrong turn? That was probably your last turn ever. What if in the maze you start to panic because you just can't get out, you just realize you're running in circles and everything is starting to look the same. Now you're missing out on the Halloween candy because you're stuck in this damn maze I told you guys to not go in. Number 2, don't be going into no fun house because it's not a fun house.
That's where I might be hiding out the night of Halloween if I'm not in the storm drains. You won't even see me coming, and I warned you guys.
Fun houses are just way too scary to visit, especially on Halloween. Everything just becomes real on that night, and mirrors seem to freak out a ton of people. And that's because you never know what you see in the mirror. I'm like, whoa, what was behind me? And finally, number 1, a place you shouldn't visit on Halloween is a jail cell. Make sure you guys are safe on this night and stay out of trouble. No fighting with your buddies just because their costume is more scarier than yours, or get into a fight with them because they got more candy than you. Also, don't go stealing other people's candies because that's my job. If you steal them,
I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna get rid of you.
Coming in at number 10, we have a Halloween flasher. Nothing says scary like your neighborhood pervert. I guess this is a big worry when parents let their kids knock on doors alone. In 2013, John Vowles of Deltona was arrested after several reports of him flashing young children. He would answer the door to trick-or-treaters wearing a loosely tied robe that exposed his genitals. What a weirdo. He isn't the only creep to have flashed kids either. The same thing has happened in many countries, including England, where in Lancashire, a man answered his door fully nude to children on Halloween. Ew. Nude creeps are actually scarier than any Halloween costume.
Moving on at number 9, we have the deal with the devil. Turns out that jack-o'-lanterns have a pretty dark origin story. They symbolize a deal with the devil gone wrong. So basically, one night a man named Stingy Jack ended up tricking and trapping the devil. He then said he would only let the devil go if he promised that he would never go to hell. I mean, crossing and trying to outsmart the devil is the last thing you should do. So the devil was like, sure my dude, no problem. But what Jack did not realize was that just because he's not going to hell doesn't mean that he's going to heaven. So in the end, when Jack died, he ended up in purgatory, just wandering around for eternity. In the end, he used a turnip and a piece of fiery coal from the devil to create a lantern. That's why it's called jack-o'-lantern. I think it should have been Stingy Jack-o'-lantern though, that would have been funny. Coming in at number 8, we have the evil spirits. So here is another theory as to how jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins became associated with Halloween. First off, turnips were used back then before pumpkins. They would hollow out the turnip and carve them into scary faces. This was done in order to scare off any spirits. Then they would light them with a candle or a piece of smoldering coal. The lanterns were then placed in the windows or doorways of their home, hoping that the face they carved was scary enough to scare off the evil spirits and welcome their ancestors inside. In our 7th spot, we have the bats. There are a couple of animals and things that are specifically associated with Halloween, like black bats. How did this happen? Well, there was a creepy myth that many believed from back in the day. The myth was that if a bat was spotted flying around a person's house 3 times, then it meant someone in that house would pass away soon. It was also believed to be bad luck if a bat flew into the person's house. It also meant that someone in the house was going to die. If the bat landed on one person in particular, it meant that that was the person who was dead. In the 1800s, bats were caught drinking the blood of cattle in Central and South America, so people immediately then labeled them as vampires. Then in 1897, Bram Stoker's Dracula depicted vampires shapeshifting into bats, so people were like, yeah, bats and vampires should be feared and they'll come and get you on Halloween. Moving on to number 6, we have these spiders. Spiders are also associated with Halloween. How did this happen? Well, back in the day, they were involved in a number of eerie superstitions. One of them was if a spider falls into a candle or flame and burns up, it meant that witches were nearby. But if you spot a spider on Halloween, it meant that the spirit of one of your ancestors was going to visit you that night. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you are with your ancestors. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the praying for the dead. This is an old school tradition that may have inspired trick-or-treating. So back in the day, people would go around door to door asking for money or food. In return, they said that they would pray for the dead. But here's the thing. If you denied them, then they would get upset and they would trash your front lawn or your garden, etc. So you kind of were obligated to give them treats, or else you'd get the trick. In our 4th spot, we have the Halloween costumes. What are you guys going as for Halloween this year? Let me know in the comments below. Now, how did the whole dressing up for Halloween thing even start? Well, during Samhain, when people thought that spirits were crossing over into their world, there were a lot of people that weren't okay with this. They were like, hell no, I don't want to mingle with these spirits, don't come near me. So they thought if they dressed up as one, that they would be left alone. Like, this is POV, I'm the spirit, like, oh bro, you're not a human, you're just a spirit like me, sick, I'll leave you alone, see you later in the afterlife or whatever. That's just one theory as to why costumes became associated with Halloween. At number 3 today, we have these sacrifices. So back in the day, the Celts considered November 1st as the day of death. Why? Well, by that time, leaves were falling and it was getting darker earlier on, and it was getting colder. So they believed that their sun god was losing strength and that Samhain, the lord of death, was taking over. So in order to appease Samhain, druid priests would lead worship ceremonies. They would offer horses, cats, black sheep, and even humans. They would shove them into wicker cages and burn them to death. They figured this would appease him and keep the spirits from harming them. In our 2nd spot, we have the trick-or-treating again. Now, this is one of the things that inspired the whole trick-or-treating thing. So continuing on with my last point about the sacrifices, how did they get these sacrifices? Well, druid priests would go house to house asking for animals or humans that would be given over to Samhain. Those that gave up stuff were promised prosperity. Those that didn't were cursed and threatened. Also, it was believed that the wandering spirits would get hungry, so if you set out a treat for them, then they would leave you be and not trick ya. Nowadays, the candy replaced the whole human sacrifice thing, so I'm glad that we changed our ways. I prefer candy. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the fairies. Now you may be thinking, oh fairies, they're so cute, I'll go as a fairy for Halloween. Well, think again. Back in the day, fairies were evil. It was believed that Halloween was a very important day for fairies. And on that day, they would steal babies, or trick you, or even hurt you. They also apparently would hunt after the spirits of those who passed away and bring them down to the gates of hell. and if you bumped into them as they were doing so, well, you were going with them. I never thought fairies could be so evil, so just saying.